My mentally ill wife tormented me for years, screaming, manipulating, even threatening to hurt herself and blame me if I ever reported her. Nobody ever believed the man, she sneered when I told her she wouldn't get away with it. I froze in that moment. But fast forward to now, they did believe the man, and her life will never be the same. When I first met Melissa, she seemed like the sweetest person in the world. She was this petite 5 feet 1 inch woman who made me feel special, like I mattered, like I was seen. We got married just a year after we started dating. Looking back, it all happened way too fast for me, but she brushed off my doubts and convinced me it was the right move. And for a while, she was right. We were in the honeymoon phase. Everything was love and affection. We even had twins. Sure, we had the usual disagreements about the kids, but nothing major. Then things started to shift. It began with mood swings, wild, violent ones. She'd yell so loud it would make the babies cry. Then she'd apologize, promise it would never happen again. Next, she started making little jokes at my expense in front of her friends. They felt personal, but I laughed them off. It was easier than causing drama. Besides, I loved her. I figured maybe I even deserved it. But the real change came slowly. So slowly I didn't even notice it at first. The yelling turned into insults. Then came the slaps. Always during arguments. She'd cry afterward and swear it wouldn't happen again. I believed her. For a while. Eventually, the apologies stopped. She started threatening me instead. I wanted to leave. I wanted to pack my things and go. But I couldn't leave the kids with her. It wasn't safe. I remember the first time I said I'd call the cops. She laughed in my face. Said if I ever told anyone, she'd hurt herself and blame me. Right there, she went to the bathroom and punched herself in the stomach to show me she was serious. She told me no one would ever believe a man who says he's being abused. She even showed me articles, stories about fathers losing custody. That's when I gave up. She had all the power, and I had none. So I shut down. Stopped seeing friends and family. She made that nearly impossible anyway. I started showing up at work with bruises I couldn't explain. Missed days because of injuries. Lied so much it started to feel normal. My friend Ree was one of the few people still in my life. He was the first to ask if I was okay. One day, I came to work with a broken finger. Told everyone it was a work accident, but even I didn't sound convincing. Ree pulled me aside. I tried to brush it off, but he wouldn't let me. He said his sister had gone through something similar, that he recognized the signs. I wanted to deny it, to keep pretending, but I couldn't. That night, Melissa went through my phone. She did that every night, and found texts from Ree asking if I was safe. She exploded. She smashed my phone against the wall and hit me with a pan. The kids were crying in their rooms. I could hear Jack sobbing into his blanket. Later, Melissa sat on the couch like nothing had happened. After that, the kids changed. Emma stopped talking. Jack started wetting the bed. Their teachers called home, worried, and like always, Melissa blamed me. Told them I was unstable and angry. Meanwhile, I started secretly researching shelters and legal help. But everything I found made me more scared. The courts weren't kind to fathers. It felt hopeless. Then reintroduced me to his sister, the one who had been through it. She helped me get connected with a counselor who worked with abused men. The counselor helped me start documenting everything. Every bruise, every injury. I finally had a plan. But then Melissa found out. I don't know how. 2 months later, she snapped. She threw a pot of boiling water at me. It hit my chest and arms. I screamed. Tried to get away, but she cornered me and started hitting me again. Emma came out of her room, crying, begging her to stop. Melissa shoved her into the wall. Emma collapsed. And that was it. Something inside me finally broke. Through the pain and the fear, I remembered the voice recorder hidden in my phone case. I turned it on without her noticing. My voice was shaking as I asked why she was doing this. She exploded, screamed about how she owned me, how she could ruin me whenever she wanted. Every word, every hit, every scream, all of it got recorded. Later, when she went upstairs to shower, I grabbed the kids, wrapped them in blankets. My arms were burned raw, but I got them into the car. My hands could barely grip the wheel. My heart was pounding. We drove straight to Ree's house. He opened the door without saying a word and pulled us inside. When someone mentioned the hospital, I shook my head. Even moving hurt. The kids, I rasped my throat raw. I can't leave them. Just the thought of being separated from them, even to get treated, sent me into a panic. Ree's girlfriend Tanya came downstairs in flannel pajamas, hair messy from sleep. She took one look at us and stepped in without hesitation. No judgment, just calm care. She got the twins settled with juice and cookies while Ree helped me peel off what was left of my shirt. The burns were bad. The fabric had melted into my skin. Blisters were already forming. Ree wanted to call an ambulance, but I was terrified. She'll find us, I told him. She'll say I kidnapped the kids. The thought of Melissa showing up at the hospital, pretending to be worried, while secretly scheming to take the twins back, it chilled me to the bone. This is abuse, Ree said. Calm, firm. He placed a hand on my shoulder, one of the few spots that wasn't burnt. You need help, and we need to call the police. I pulled out the recorder. My hand was shaking. The device felt heavier than it should have. I got it, I whispered. A mix of disbelief and fragile hope. I recorded everything. I had proof. The evidence I'd been too afraid to collect for years was finally saved. Melissa's threats and violence recorded and preserved digitally. That night felt like the longest of my life. I couldn't sleep, even after Ray convinced me to take some leftover pain pills from his dental surgery. The medication dulled the burning in my skin to a steady ache, but it couldn't quiet the anxiety racing through my mind. I just held the twins while they slept, their little bodies finally at peace. I stared at the ceiling, thinking about what would come next. I knew the real battle was only beginning. Melissa wasn't going to let us go easily. Sure enough, my phone blew up with texts around 3 a.m. Rhea had given me his old phone, and I used it to message Melissa, letting her know we were safe but needed space. Her replies went from confused to angry to outright threatening. First, she pretended to be concerned, asking where we were and if the kids were okay. Then came the accusations, claiming I was turning them against her. By morning, she was threatening to call the cops and report that I'd kidnapped the kids and that I was mentally unstable. Rhea helped me reach out to a lawyer I'd been secretly in contact with, a woman named Diane who specialized in domestic abuse cases. I found her on a support forum, but I'd never had the courage to follow through until now. She agreed to meet us that morning. I was nervous about taking the kids out, afraid Melissa might be looking for us, but we couldn't hide forever. Diane listened to the recording with a serious expression, hands clasped under her chin. Melissa's angry voice filled the small office, mixed with the twins' cries and the sickening thud of Emma hitting the wall. When the recording ended, Diane looked at me with a fire in her eyes beneath her calm exterior. "This is exactly what we needed," she said, steady and reassuring. "But we need medical documentation of your burns. You have to go to the hospital." She explained that physical evidence would make a huge difference in court. I still hesitated, more afraid of Melissa finding us than worried about my injuries. But Diane made it clear. Without medical records, Melissa could claim I'd hurt myself. She could say I was unstable, trying to frame her. Ray stayed at the law office with the twins while Diane took me to the ER. I hated leaving them, but I knew it was necessary. The ER doctor was professional, but clearly unsure when I said my wife had thrown boiling water on me. I could see the doubt flash in his eyes, that unspoken question of how a woman could do this to a man. That brief moment of disbelief, just like I'd feared. But once Diane introduced herself and explained the situation, everything changed. The doctor documented everything carefully, photos of the burns, notes on the splash pattern. He said the injuries were consistent with hot liquid being thrown. Treatment was brutal. They had to debride the burns, scraping away dead skin and cleaning the wounds. Even with medication, the pain was intense. I gripped the exam table, sweat pouring down my face. The doctor said I had second-degree burns across most of my chest and arms, with a few patches of third-degree burns. He warned that if they didn't heal properly, I might need skin grafts. Meanwhile, Melissa was busy spinning her own story. She called the police and claimed I'd assaulted her and kidnapped the kids. By the time we left the hospital, it was an APB out for me. Diane quickly got on the phone with the police and arranged for us to come in voluntarily with our evidence. Walking into that station was terrifying. Melissa's voice echoed in my mind. All the time she said no one would ever believe a man could be abused. I thought about the statistics, how rare it was for male victims to be taken seriously. The twins clung to me, picking up on my fear. But with Ray, Tanya, and Diane by my side, I felt stronger. I wasn't alone anymore. The detective on the case was Officer Martinez. She had sharp eyes and a direct manner, but something about her put me at ease. She listened carefully while I played the recording. Her face stayed neutral, but I saw her jaw tighten when Melissa could be heard shoving Emma into the wall. She looked over the medical records and burned photos, then asked to speak with the children. That was the part one dreaded most. I didn't want them to relive it. But Officer Martinez explained their words could make a difference. A child psychologist interviewed them separately in a friendly room full of toys and bright furniture to help them feel safe. I waited outside, full of worry, hoping they weren't too overwhelmed or scared. While they were being interviewed, Officer Martinez took my full statement. I told her everything, years of escalating abuse, the threats, the way Melissa isolated me, how she controlled who I talked to, what I wore, even monitored my phone and email. I showed her my journal and old injury photos, explaining how Melissa always had an excuse. I fell. I tripped. I cut myself. Martinez asked hard questions, but I never felt judged. When I finished, she looked straight at me. "Mr. Thompson," she said, "we take domestic violence seriously, no matter the gender of the victim. What you've experienced is criminal abuse, and we're going to help you." Her words were calm, but I could feel the real care behind them. I nearly broke down. After so many years thinking no one would help, hearing that kind of validation from a police officer meant everything. It felt like a weight I'd carried forever had finally been lifted. I could breathe again. The rest of the day was a blur. Martinez said they needed to find and question Melissa and would be filing for an emergency protection order. After their interviews, the twins were returned to me, looking emotionally exhausted but somehow lighter, like they'd let go of something heavy. Jack climbed onto my lap, careful of my bandages. Emma leaned against me and grabbed my hand. "You did so good," I told them, my voice thick with emotion. "I'm so proud of you." They didn't fully understand what was happening, but they knew we weren't going back. And for now, that was enough. Diane said we needed to stay somewhere Melissa wouldn't think to look. Ray's place was too risky. He suggested we go to his sister Sarah's apartment. She was the one who'd help connect me to resources. She lived about an hour away in a secure building. It was the safest choice. The drive was tense. I kept watching the rearview mirror, afraid I'd see Melissa's car. The twins fell asleep in the back, worn out from the day. Ray drove while I sat in the front, my burns too painful to let me drive long. We didn't talk much, both lost in thought. Sarah was waiting when we arrived. Her apartment was ready. A pull-out couch for me and an air mattress for the kids. She'd even picked up pajamas and toothbrushes for them, thinking of what we might need. That small kindness almost broke me. I hadn't felt that kind of care in so long. Thank you, I managed to say as she showed us around. I don't know how I'll ever repay you for this, I said. Sarah just shook her head. You don't have to, she replied softly. I've been where you are. Not exactly, but close enough to understand. There was something in her eyes, empathy, maybe, that made me feel a little less alone. That night, I barely slept. Every small sound woke me. I kept thinking Melissa had found us. The twins slept curled up on the air mattress, their tiny bodies tangled together like they were still in the womb. I watched them breathe, their faces calm in sleep, and I promised myself I'd do whatever it took to give them the safe, loving home they deserved. In the morning, Officer Martinez called. They found Melissa at our house and brought her in for questioning. When shown the recording and the medical reports, she first claimed I was the abusive one, that she'd only acted in self-defense. But the evidence was overwhelming, especially with the twins' statements matching what was heard on the audio. They were holding her for now, and the prosecutor was reviewing charges. I felt instant relief, but it didn't last. Diane called shortly after with a dose of reality. This was only the beginning of a long legal fight. Melissa had already reached out to her wealthy parents, who had hired an expensive attorney. They were pushing the story that I was an unstable father who'd manipulated the kids into lying. We need to file for emergency custody immediately, Diane said. The protective order helps, but we need to establish you as their primary caregiver before her parents try anything. She warned me. Even with evidence, these cases could be tough. The courts were better about recognizing male victims now, but there were still biases. The next few days were strange, trying to keep things normal for the twins while navigating a legal maze. Sarah let us stay in her apartment. She worked from home as a graphic designer, so she was around to help while I met with Diane and talked to the police. Ray brought clothes and toys from the house while Melissa was in custody, slipping in and out so she wouldn't notice anything missing. When she was released on bail, we got a court date for the emergency custody hearing. Diane helped me prepare, going over the types of questions I might face. She warned me Melissa's lawyer would try to make me look unstable or angry, might bring up past arguments to paint me as the abuser. The thought of seeing Melissa in court terrified me, but the thought of the twins going back to her terrified me more. The day before the hearing, I got a call from my parents. I hadn't spoken to them in months. Melissa had slowly isolated me from them, saying they were too critical of her. They had seen a news report. Apparently, male domestic violence victims still made the evening news, and they were panicked. Why didn't you tell us? My mom asked, her voice trembling. We could have helped. I didn't know how to explain it. Melissa had convinced me they wouldn't believe me, that they'd take her side. She was so good at pretending to be the perfect wife and mother in public. I just said I was scared. I didn't know what to do. They said they were coming to the hearing to support me. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I had a real family. Not just the twins, but my parents, Ray, Sarah, even Diane. I wasn't alone anymore. The courthouse was cold, with marble floors and echoing halls. I wore my best suit, but the burns on my neck and hands were still visible despite the sleeves. The twins stayed with a court-appointed child advocate. I was relieved they didn't have to face Melissa, but I hated being apart from them. When Melissa walked in with her lawyer and her parents, my heart stopped. She looked nothing like the woman who had thrown boiling water at me. Her hair was neatly styled. She wore a modest dress, eyes lowered, playing the role of the grieving mother. Her parents stood protectively beside her. Her father had a hand on her shoulder. It was jarring, even though I'd seen her pull this act before. The hearing was brutal. Her lawyer tried everything Diane had warned me about, said I was unstable, claimed I'd set Melissa up, that I was the real abuser. They twisted past arguments into evidence of control. Each accusation felt like a punch. But then Diane presented the truth. She played the recording, Melissa's voice, yelling threats, shoving our daughter into a wall. The medical reports were shown, photos of my injuries and their healing. A child psychologist testified about Emma and Jack's fear of their mom, their nightmares. The judge, a serious woman in her 60s, listened without showing emotion. When all the evidence had been heard, she called for a recess to make her decision. Those 30 minutes felt like a lifetime. I sat with my parents and Ray in the hallway. None of us spoke much. My dad would occasionally squeeze my shoulder. Back in the courtroom, the judge remained expressionless as she read her ruling. Based on the overwhelming evidence, I am granting the emergency protective order. Temporary full custody is awarded to Mr. Thompson. The mother will have no contact with the children until further hearings and must complete a psychological evaluation and an anger management program. I almost collapsed from the relief. Melissa, on the other hand, snapped. The calm, sorrowful act disappeared. You can't take my children, she screamed, lunging toward the bench. Her lawyer tried to hold her back, but she pushed him away. He's lying. They're all lying. Court officers grabbed her as she thrashed and shouted. The judge watched grimly before ordering them to remove her. As they dragged her out, I caught a glimpse of her parents. For the first time, they looked shaken, like they were finally seeing a part of their daughter they didn't recognize. Outside the courthouse, I broke down. The stress, the fear, the years of abuse, it all came crashing in. Ray wrapped an arm around me. My mom held my hand. They kept me grounded as I tried to breathe. It's not over, Diane said gently. This is just temporary. We'll have to prepare for the full hearing. There may be supervised visitation later. The court will review again in 90 days. We need to show the kids have a stable, healthy home. She was right. The road ahead would be long. But for the first time, it felt like we had a real chance. When I picked up the twins from the child advocate, they ran straight into my arms, both talking over each other. Can we go home now? One of them asked. The question hit me hard. Our old house didn't feel like home anymore. It was full of shadows. We're going to find a new home, I told them, kneeling despite the pain of my still healing burns. Somewhere just for us. Somewhere we can be happy and safe. The next few months were hard, but healing. We stayed with my parents for a while as I found a small apartment close to the twins' preschool. I took a leave from work to focus on helping them settle in and to stay on top of court dates and therapy sessions. My boss was more understanding than I expected. Once I explained everything, he even offered to hold my job for as long as I needed. Melissa was charged with domestic assault and child endangerment. Eventually, she agreed to a plea deal that required her to go through serious therapy and anger management before she could even ask for supervised visits. Her parents, who had once been her biggest supporters, slowly pulled away as more details about her actions came out. I felt a storm of emotions about that. Sadness for her, relief for us, and even some sympathy for her parents, who were struggling to match the daughter they thought they knew with what the court showed them. The twins started seeing a therapist who specializes in childhood trauma. Emma slowly started talking more, her words growing as she began to feel safe. Jack's nightmares became less frequent, though they hadn't stopped entirely. They asked about their mom, sometimes small, confused questions that broke my heart. I answered as honestly as I could without blaming Melissa, just like the therapist suggested, making sure they felt heard without feeling torn. 6 months after we left, I was unpacking in our new place when I came across an old photo album. Inside were pictures from our wedding, from when the twins were born, from vacations, snapshots of moments that once looked happy, but now felt hollow. I sat on the floor, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes, staring at these memories of a life that had looked perfect from the outside, but had been quietly falling apart. Emma found me there and climbed into my lap. She pointed at a photo of Melissa holding her as a baby. Is Mommy still mad at us? She asked, her little face so serious. No, sweetheart, I said gently. Mommy has big feelings she's learning to handle better. But it was never your fault she got mad, okay? Not ever. She seemed to think about it, then nodded. I like our new home better, she said. Nobody yells here. That simple sentence hit me like a wave. I held her close, amazed by how children can heal when they're given safety and love. Jack joined us a moment later, curious about what we were looking at. Soon, the three of us were flipping through the album, the twins giggling at old baby photos. That night, after they fell asleep, I called Reed to thank him again. I don't know where we'd be if you hadn't noticed something was wrong, I told him. That's what friends are for, he said. But how are you really doing? I paused before answering. Better, I said honestly. Not all the way there, but better. And I meant it. The burns, both literal and emotional, had started to heal, even though some scars would stay. The legal fight wasn't over, but every ruling so far had gone our way. The twins were getting stronger, and so was I. There were still tough days. Days when loud noises made me flinch. Nights when I double-checked every lock. Mornings when I woke from nightmares of Melissa finding us. But there were good days too, and more of them lately. Days when the kids laughed freely. When I could go hours without thinking about the past. When I could imagine a future that wasn't shaped by fear. I knew we weren't out of the woods. Melissa would eventually finish her court programs and try to see the kids again. The twins would have more questions as they got older and began to understand what had happened. I'd still be working through my own trauma, learning to trust again, learning how to be both mom and dad to two little ones who had seen too much too soon. But for the first time in a long time, I felt real hope. Not the desperate kind that keeps you crawling through the dark, but a strong, steady belief that we were going to be okay. The three of us would build something new. Something safe. Something whole. And for now, that was enough. One day at a time, we were getting our lives back.